Hello, Saints. This is Mark White, Executive Director of Walk Worthy Ministries, with another episode of Walking Worthy of the Lord. So, who was this false pseudo-Christian Barry the Trumper that was introduced to Christ in 5 minutes? Well, let me tell you the story that happened to me today. I was at my favorite nursery in Orlando picking up a few plants for our little front area of our small adobe house. They're in the back of the car here, Boaz, the car. And I have this t-shirt is illegal in 52 countries with a Bible verse on the back. I'm not ashamed of the gospel. And I wear this to the prison. We're preaching at the prison today in Orlando, the large prison east of the airport called the Central Florida Reception Center. But you wouldn't want to have a wedding there. Oh, no, not at all. In any event, this fella comes up to me and says, "Where did you get your t-shirt?" And I said, "Well, I think I got it at the Voice of the Martyrs. I'm not so sure they make it anymore." "Well, what do you do?" And he was all excited. He said, "My name is Barry," and this is his last name. He introduces himself. And he was very zealous for his ideas. So he said, "I've traveled quite a bit, and I'm semi-retired, and what's going on in the world and so forth." And I said, well, I told him about how I stayed in America. I wanted to leave America for years, but God wouldn't let me. And I told him, I said, "America's got the American dream gospel." He said, "What do you mean?" And right away I knew. And he said, "Well, the last administration and this and that." And I said, the American dream gospel, Barry, I didn't call him brother, is to hate your enemy, kill your enemy, and take his stuff. Not love your enemy and do not resist him who is evil. Well,
watch out,
he did.
Vehicle on shoulder ahead.
I could tell he didn't like that at all. He said, "Well, have you been around the world? You talk about killing." And I said, "Do you want to know the history of America? I'm a historian." I said, "All the history books, especially the ones written by Christian, lied to me. I've done a track called The First Thanksgiving. Do you want to know?" And I started to fish in my wallet, in my pocket, to get my business card holder out to give him one for Walk Worthy Ministries. And he started to look, and I thought, this is going to end pretty soon. I've been through this rodeo before. And he said, well, I know the history. And I said, "No, I don't think you do." And then he said, "Well, I'm a constitutionalist." Talking about the American Constitution. Those 5 founding fathers, they'd give their lives. And I said, "No, they didn't. All 5 founding fathers, I've written a track on it, a post on it. They denied Christ, and they went to their death as unbelievers." He said, "George Washington." I said, "Well, George Washington was the head of the Masonic Lodge in one of his cities. Do you see the apron he wore?" And I told him about the obelisks in the 3 nation states in the world. City of London, well, he didn't like that. City of London, the financial capital. The Vatican, the spiritual capital. Washington, D.C., the Washington Monument. They're all phallic symbols. I said they're sexual perverts. I said America was founded by these people, and they threw the revolution. He said, "What do you mean?" And I was trying to get to the point, but he started backing up on me that 90% of the colonists in the 13 colonies, and 13 is an esoteric number, 39 people signed the Declaration, those are all esoteric numbers, that 90% of the people in America opposed the revolution because they didn't want to rebel against the king. The king wasn't asking him anything to do that was unbiblical. We're talking about believers now too. And the people like Patrick Henry and these guys, the hyper-patriots that wanted to make America great again after we stole and killed all the Indians, stole their land. He didn't like, well, he said, and finally then I said, and the Lord said, "Well, you need to tune it up, Mark. This guy needs jackhammer preaching because he's got a concrete heart." And I said, "The American dream Jesus is no Jesus at all." I said, "Brother," I didn't think I said brother, I said, "Sir, you need to stop following America and start following the real Christ." He said, "Well, that's good enough." So I gave him my card. "You want my card to learn the truth?" Look up. Well, and he took it. I'm sure it's going to find the round file in the trash. But we'll pray for Barry the Trumper, that he comes to his senses and escapes perdition. Because the best he can hope for is he's in spiritual no man's land now, not anywhere near the real Christ. and heading for the lake of fire. So pseudo-Christian, false Christian, Barry the Trumper, he was finally introduced to the real Christ in about 5 minutes. And he turned and walked away. He didn't say anything else about my t-shirt, or me, or the ministry, or that he wanted to know about Christ. He was totally turned off. That, saints, is a response you'll get from the real gospel. Either they'll be hungry for more. Well, what do you mean? Show me. As the woman I talked about yesterday on the phone from Quicken when I called in for tax advice. I'll tell you about her. Diana, the true saint. Completely different response. Or the response like Barry Trumper, well, they'll turn around and walk away, won't have anything else to do with you. Those are the kind of people that would kill Jesus if he came again and called them on their hyper-patriotism. Amen? Amen. This is Mark White on behalf of Walk Worthy with another episode of Walking in a Manner Worthy of the Lord. Saints, we're one day closer to home and to him. Be a real Christian. Don't be American Dream Christian. Flee from these things, you people of God, as Paul said to Timothy, and pursue the true gospel and peace and righteousness. Barry never talked about the kingdom. He never talked about holiness. It doesn't make any difference to him because he's not interested in the kingdom or holiness or the real Christ. But we are not of that ilk, are we, saints? No, we're not. We're real Christians. We're one day closer to home and to him. When you see these things taking place in the world today, look up. Jesus said, for our redemption is drawing ever closer. Goodbye for now.